Coming up on today's episode.
And, it's a disaster for us. It's a disaster for me. But I say, wow, this is a reasonable bank. And reasonable is being very nice to them, I can assure you. This is a reasonable bank, but we've ended up with a very bad manager.
When you're building a business, no one has time for bullshit. Welcome to the No BS Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jo Agresta, and we're unpacking the real stories, practical lessons, and honest truths behind building a business in property, finance, and beyond. Welcome back, everyone, to the No BS Real Estate Podcast, your listening how-to guide to the Aussie finance and real estate market. I'm your host, Jo Agresta. Now, today, I'm joined by Ashley Blyth, Director of PPM Finance. Ashley is a broker or finance broker with over 30 years experience across residential lending, self-employed borrowers, and business loans. In this episode, we're unpacking a problem that a lot of business owners face, assuming finance is too hard, refinancing is off the table, or lenders won't touch them because their income or their business structure is not simple. So what we're going to talk about today is what options may exist, what lenders are actually asking for, and how a broker like Ashley can help business owners understand their position before they completely rule themselves out. So without further ado, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here because when we caught up in our initial conversation, we had a really good chat. And honestly, I'm like, oh man, we're going to talk a lot. But you had such a wealth of knowledge and so much experience. And I think when there's someone who's willing to jump on a podcast with me and have that experience shared, I'm always very excited because all those structures and those business setups can be so complicated. And I can say confidently myself, I've been in this exact position before. I'm like, I can't do anything.
Yeah, I find a lot of businesses think that. So whereas we've always got a solution, there is something available for everyone. So, and that's what we're here hopefully to step them through.
Oh, we're going to step through all of it today, 100%. But I think that the best place to start, like any story, is we want to know more about you. So, Ashley, for people who haven't come across your profile before, can you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do at PPM Finance and the types of clients that you typically work with?
So I suppose I was a career banker for a long time. So I was a business banker in the Big Fours. And 10 years ago, I actually switched out to run my own business as a mortgage broker and finance broker. I specialise mainly on small business, self-employed. They're my bread and butter clients. That's who I enjoy working with. And it was basically to fill the gap that the banks were leaving, is to be a relationship manager that they actually ring up and ask silly questions to, and I'm happy to answer them. So and we hear all the harebrained ideas and the not so ones and work out a way forward.
And you would have been like, because when you work for a lender, you're so right, like you're kind of locked into whatever their products and policy is. So to get those kind of ways to help them by different lenders or different options, like you're very limited in what you can do.
Yeah, and definitely inside the Big Four, you're very, very limited in what you can do.
Yep.
So now I get to see those clients that I couldn't help in the past and say, hey, look, I actually have some alternatives for you. It also, you get pigeonholed inside a bank as to what size you are. And it's actually very difficult for clients to switch from being a small business lender to a medium-sized business loans. Yeah. Whereas with myself, I sort of just deal with the whole range. So, yeah.
All right. I think that's the beauty of working with a broker like yourself, because what stood out to me when we caught up was you started talking about like the different structures that, businesses have set up, like trusts or, companies, sole traders. And when we were going through those options, I'm like, geez, there's so much lending policy here.
Yeah, and I was catching up with a client today, and they made the transition from a sole trader to a company, and just that whole thing. And they said, "I wish we had talked about this ages ago because, what they've done, bought their property, is not in the right structure." Yeah, but they didn't speak to their accountant beforehand, which is sometimes not the greatest idea. But at least with a broker like myself, we'll actually ask you those questions. Are you buying this in the right structure? Have you checked with your accountant? Because what I'm seeing is how people do things differently. The federal government's throwing a bit of a spanner in the works with that at the moment with trusts. And that's creating a lot of angst amongst my clients because I've got a lot that operate in a trust. But we always say, look, let's wait till the dust settles. Let's see what actually passes. We've got time on our hands and then move forward with strategies. But that's all they want to hear. They just want to know, oh, okay, I don't have to do something today.
Correct.
And that's what your broker sort of brings to you. It's just another person you can call and just say, hey, look, I'm concerned or I'm thinking about this. What do you think?
I think that's the big difference, like, and why when I'm speaking with certain people, like I always say, a broker doesn't cost you up front. Like, yeah, it's the bank. So this is effectively free guidance and advice until a certain point when you take an action.
Yeah.
You know, why wouldn't you just open the doors of communication?
Yeah. And I tell all my clients, tell me everything. I work
Yep.
out what needs to be told afterwards. And, their accountants are very focused on the numbers. I'm sort of looking at a bigger strategy. It might be asset protection, might be paying down the home loan. I sort of get to know my clients as to what sort of goals they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And then we make sure that, we're having a casual conversation, very much like this,
Yeah.
to say, this is what we think we should do. And, if it's financial planning advice, go off and see your planner about that. If it's accounting, go and see your accountant.
I think that's the hard part, right? It's like when you don't, because from the lending perspective, I think the wrong broker can also play a big part. Like when you're working in a business structure, you go to a standard residential kind of broker who specializes maybe in like first home buying. When they see all these complicated structures for business, it's kind of like you want a specialist. And that's what stood out to me is, and why you're on the business like version of the podcast is because we have a lot of business owners that have written themselves off completely and said, oh, it's too hard with the structures I've got. It's not going to happen. And I'm like,
yeah, nah. And that is a big problem. The industry there's a lot of mortgage brokers out there. I tend to market myself as more of a finance and mortgage broker, the finance being the business side. I understand multiple sources of income. I look through a lot of all that and understand how we can actually finance it. Accountants are very good at hiding income. And I'm not, I can't think of a reason why they do that, but and then I just turn around and I say, well, let's uncover what's your true income here, and then what you can service and what you can afford. That's a little bit of a deep dive, but that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and that's why I love this conversation because, you've worked across the residential lending side, self-employed borrowers and business lending. Like, I guess, how does that background shape the way you help your business owners now?
I think it's the experience piece that you've seen a lot of these structures before. I would have looked over hundreds of businesses, cash flows, financials, structures. There's nothing completely new out there. There's only so many different types, but it's just having that knowledge of what I've seen before and what I know works that helps you go through that. And, it's a bit of, uncovering things. It's asking the right questions and finding out, oh, there's another bit way over here that, I just didn't tell you about. Yeah, I've got to know those things, but I've also got to know to ask for them. And that's what I think differentiates a business broker for finance versus just a general residential broker.
Oh, it's a big difference too. Like I found the difference even just by speaking with you, like your understanding, and it honestly made me think, all right, I wish I knew about him like about 2 months earlier, because it's true. Like I'll be really frank, like our, business cash flow was up and down, and I'm like, well, how's anyone going to ever like look at us? How can we do any borrowing or lending, whether that's for our own, personal lives or within the business? But then another broker mentioned to me, you've got options actually, and I was shocked. And
a bit of that is the story. That's I often tell a lot of people I'm just a good storyteller. So because I have to take your business and explain that to a bank. From that point of view, that's what I try and do. And when we talk about people buying a house, you've got a PAYG salary, you've got a pay slip. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's not the story with a business owner. So we just have to tell the story, understand what it is. And once the bank's comfortable, that's 90% of the task done, is that they're actually comfortable with who's borrowing the money and then they can, and where the income comes from.
And I think that's the key, right? It's where's the income coming from, and then what's the story that you've sold them. If you said, oh yeah, this business is always up and down and pretty shit. So it's like, yeah, okay, they're not going to get a loan.
They're not going to get a loan.
But if, the story is that, yes, they're up and down, but like they've got buffers in place and, the cash flow is pretty decent, and it's a different story that you're telling. Like that's why you're a key component into the success of,
Yeah.
not, I don't want to say failure, but like success or pass or not pass.
Well, sometimes it's actually telling clients that they can't do stuff is
Yeah.
just as important. Is to say, look, it's not a great time at the moment for you to do this.
Mm.
You're going to put yourself into a really hard spot, and remove that little bit of fat that you've got and relaxing now. If it all comes off in the next few months, well, let's revisit it. Let's go again. And there's also a bit of, well, are you ready to do this? Have we got the
Mm.
numbers in the right place? It's a funny time of year. We've just gone through May. We're into June. People are just finishing last year's tax returns.
Yeah. It's the rush.
Yeah, the rush. Yeah. When you're applying for business finance, looking back how things went 11 months ago, probably not where we want to be.
They're very true too. And it brings me to like my next question, like, what kind of business owner usually works with yourself? Like, are you sort of like the SMEs, or is it like all the way up to your bigger businesses?
Look, I deal with the SMEs, the sole trader that's maybe going into a partnership or even just as a sole trader. They're fun to deal with. They're great little people to talk to. They don't have huge needs. It's normally a one-off transaction to doing something here and now. Right through to my clients that own multiple businesses, have serious dollars out the door. And, they require a bit more time and effort. But generally, once we've got them organised, it's then just touching base all the time with them and saying, well, what's the next project?
Yeah.
Some of my more interesting clients, people going into property development and things like that,
Oh,
that's a
gosh.
project by project.
Yeah.
And so, each project is a new beginning every time. We've had some interesting times with obviously cost of goods in that industry,
Yep.
and making sure it all runs. But if you've got the amount of fat that you need in them, and we all know how it works, then it generally just rolls on.
And it's impressive to me that you can manage that level of complexity, because there's a lot to do there with, like, especially when someone has multiple businesses, like
Yeah.
the structures, the tax, the account, like that would just be a whole headache. I'm already picturing it.
Yeah. Family trees are wonderful things. So we get the Excel spreadsheet out and draw little boxes and circles and arrows everywhere.
Wow.
I haven't quite managed to get to Caravan, I think it is, or how to do that. Sorry, I'm a finance person, not an
artist.
artist. Yeah, I think that's what I need to be. But yeah, you sometimes just have to work out, where does the money flow, how does it flow.
It's like a systems map.
Yeah, that's exactly what it
it's
is.
like,
Yeah.
okay, so money, business 1, business 2, 3, arrow.
Arrow, and at the bottom there's a bucket, and that's you. So
Yeah.
and it all ended up down here. So yeah.
All right. I like that you're visual though, because I think that's half the battle for a lot of this finance stuff. Like, we'll have stuff on the screen as we're speaking, but half the battle is you need a visual explainer.
Oh,
And a diagram.
Yeah. I'm still very much a pen and pad person.
Me too.
And so, pen and pad, and I start writing in circles and things like that and put my notes in. So I'm getting used to AI. I do record a lot of my interviews now for my note taking, but I still have the pen and paper next to me as well. So
I feel like you have, like, I'm so used to pen and paper. Everything I do is pen and paper, and I always have it out when I'm explaining something, especially to like my team, where I'm like, my brain's not making sense, so let me draw you a picture.
There was I assume it's still there. There was a great coffee shop in Brighton called The Pantry.
I remember that.
And it used to have the butcher's paper on the thing.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many deals I wrote at The Pantry using those crayons on my pen and have to take the butcher's paper with me. So it was a great time of life when we had those sort of things, and say, just hand that to your assistants and go, there's the deal, it's all done. I've just said it was okay. And they sort of look at it and go, it's got crayon.
It's like, who did this? I find that so funny, the crayon aspect, but it works.
It works.
And all you need is that, I think, that someone that is willing to spend the time to take that explanation with you. Like, if you've got someone who's kind of rushing you through the process or saying it should be right, just trust me. That's where I have red flags. For me, I'm like, I don't know why you're pushing me. Now I don't trust you.
Trust me, Passano. No, fingers crossed. You just, this is the whole thing. You just need to understand people.
Yeah.
And they love talking about their businesses. You go and I love talking about mine, but get a small business owner. I love going and kicking the tires and walking around the factory, and seeing it. and they love talking about it. They love people. My dad was in small business. A lot of my family's in small business. We really love that sort of aspect of it.
And I think that's good to hear too, because you'd have to enjoy that space. And business owners, like I know you and I would
Mm.
both know, we do like talking about what we do.
Yeah.
We enjoy it. It's like
Mm.
I've built it up. I'm proud of it. Now I
Yeah.
just need to get the right, levers in place to make it work.
Yeah.
A quick pause. We'll be right back. Here's a word from one of our sponsors who supports the show. If you've ever chased a hotspot suburb, or maybe you're trying to look for properties in the market and don't know where to start, then Scott Agate is someone you'll want to talk to from Green Shoots Property. Green Shoots Property focuses on identifying market trends before they become a hotspot and then you eventually get priced out. They focus on the trends that actually will show growth and potential in markets before they boom. It's about buying strategically before the growth cycle matures, not jumping in when everyone else is already there. If you want smart positioning instead of trend chasing, then Scott Agate and his team at Green Shoots Property can help you out. His details are in the show notes below. And this is a big part of, getting into today's discussion. Before we start the topic, I need to put our no BS statement of the day on the table, which is, for those that are new around here, basically I throw out a spicy statement and then by the end of the episode, we're going to have Ash determine whether it's bullshit or not bullshit. So today's statement is, a profitable business does not mean a finance-ready business. So we'll let that sit for the episode. At the end, after everything we talk about, we'll come back and determine if that's bullshit or not. So I think we need to start with the problem, right, that business owners are currently facing. So what are some of the most common assumptions that business owners make about borrowing or refinancing that are not always true, in your opinion?
First one is that they only think there's 4 banks to go to. That's the first one you have to get. Yeah, they really just think, a lot of them just think like, well, they're the only 4 that do the lending.
Right.
And there's not. There's, people often talk about I have 40 lenders. I would have 140 lenders out there.
Yeah.
I don't use them all, but they're all available. Business owners have got lots of choices nowadays. And the biggest problem I have is actually convincing business owners that there's got to be a link between what you're doing with the money and what sort of money you're getting.
Yeah.
A business owner just thinks, well, I just need a loan or I just need an overdraft. And you say, well, what's it for? And they say, well, I'm running out of cash. You go, okay, well, what did you spend it on? So, I went and bought all this equipment on my credit card. And you went, oh, okay, so we don't need to pay the credit card. We actually need to finance the equipment. And so, I spend a lot of time looking through businesses and say, what have you done? What have you invested in? And how did you do it? A lot of them just use, their own cash. They've pulled it out of their own mortgage.
Yep.
Or they've used their credit card, especially when they start off, and they've gone and bought assets. And I say that's not a real smart way of doing things. And that's why you're in where you are now.
I think that credit card trap is a big trap.
Yep.
And if done incorrectly can be so damaging to, catching up.
Yeah, it's one of those questions people get asked, credit cards, work of the devil or useful tool. I'm in the useful tool, but you've got to use
manage
it. You've got to manage it. You've got to pay it off every month. Yeah,
Yep.
that's what a credit card is. It's a short term, paid off every month. So if you're buying something that's going to last 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, a credit card's not how you finance it. And that's whether it's a laptop or a car or a piece of machinery or a deposit on a building. They've all been used on credit cards because they thought, I just needed the finance now.
Yeah, I love the answer to that question because I guess, why do you think that so many business owners rule themselves out before they've actually had their situation properly assessed by someone like yourself?
It's their biggest thing is fear. They don't know, and they just think the answer will be no. Or they've spoken to a bank and a banker has turned around and said, I don't think you're really, ready or a fit or something like that. And, okay, you might not be a fit for that bank or that banker, more the case.
Yeah, like the assessor.
It's, my biggest task when dealing with most banks is actually finding good bankers. I spend a lot of time, investing in the bankers I deal with, and then they move on and I have to start all over again. But, I've got a good knowledge base of who's around, who does what, those sort of industries,
Mm.
and how we can support them.
I think those relationships are key, because when you kind of come up against a lender and a random assessor, it makes it hard because you're having to build rapport as the broker too, as well as build rapport on behalf of your client.
Yeah, you're never building rapport with a lender's credit assessor. That's a misnomer, I think. You got to understand that, even someone who's banked with someone for 10 years, they think, oh, I've got all this great history. Chances are the banker's been there less than 18 months
Mm.
and the credit assessor has never seen your file before.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're one step away from being a new to bank client for them. They don't have the history. The days of a branch manager being there for 20 years and 10 years,
It's rare.
well, no, they're gone.
Yeah.
They just don't exist anymore. So your relation, that's where that's why I started out as a broker. I said, I want to actually fulfill that role, that I actually know what your business is about. And I can explain that to every single person that I need to.
And it's good when you have like that solid relationship with one broker where you're not visiting multiple brokers. Like you go to one broker to get a deal, then you go to another broker to get asset finance, and, you keep jumping around. I think the consistency with someone who knows your books and can interpret whatever the accountants put on the table, or if you don't have an accountant, who are you partnered with that you'd recommend and stuff like that.
And have those conversations that maybe you've outgrown your accountant, and maybe it's time for you to look on elsewhere. But it's all the business brokers, we all deal with the same funders.
Mm.
So, it's interesting you say, that people go to a car yard and say, oh, well, I'll get my finance through the car yard. And I think, really, it's a car yard selling cars. I don't think they're going to be the best people to do your finance.
Mm.
I will have access to multiple lenders who will offer, actually competing all the time. That car yard will have one lender. That's the only one that they deal with. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, and that's the same for business loans, equipment finance, all the way around. I think your business broker that deals with you from your home loan through to the car finance for the business. Look, we're only ever a phone call away. So quick email, hey Ash, I bought this. That's because they don't normally ask me, can I buy or will I buy or should I? They just send me a thing saying, oh, we bought this.
Far out.
Yeah, thanks. We want to pick it up tomorrow because it's not going to be ready later today. That's okay, isn't it? And you're like, oh. Okay. Yeah, no problems. 24 hours notice was a lot of time for me sometimes, but but it's good. It keeps you on your toes, and I enjoy it. That's what I like doing.
I think that's the best answer you could have said, to be honest, because you want to enjoy what you do, but you also, I think the people that work with you are going to connect with that. They're going to see that and feel it straight away. And, a lot of business owners think like that, I won't qualify or income's too messy, like those scenarios. I think we need to kind of talk about who this applies to, because in your opinion, like what types of business owners or professionals are usually facing the issue of, I can't afford it or I can't do it?
Time poor ones. The ones that are, they're so busy in their business, they don't actually step back and, actually look at what they're doing. My Medico clients are a good case in point for that, because they're so busy actually being medical specialists that the billings and, all the other bits and pieces of their finance, they just, not exactly 100% on top of it, okay? Let's put it that way. Some are really good, but, a lot are just billing it and, they get to this time of year and realise, wow, this is what I did in, 11 months ago. And so, look, you've got to be able to, I suppose, how do I put it? Go with the flow sometimes with clients and see where they go.
True. And, I think medicos are a good example of that time poor, right? But and a lot of people here, like, who are real estate professionals, I find they're also like those real estate agents, like who are agency owners. They're dealing with everyone else's kind of money, properties. So when it comes to their own, they just don't, they either don't prioritize it properly or they give it to someone and just say, sort it out. And that's where it's all very messy, and they kind of just lump themselves into that box of, I can't do it. Don't, it's too hard.
It's just too hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like too much to manage, can't be bothered.
Yeah. And when really what they need to do is sit down and hopefully with someone like myself over a coffee, is just map out where are they and where do they want to go? What do they want to do? We'll figure out the plan from there. But it's 9 times out of 10, it's just stopping and taking a breath and saying, well, okay, what is it you actually want to do?
Yeah.
And then let's figure out how we can get there. Let's figure out what information we do need. And we can always do that. So
I think it's like, I think I need to have a session with you with the crayons and the butcher's paper and a coffee. I really would love that.
Yeah. You can see with coffee and the crayons and butcher's paper. That's me. Yeah.
Maybe that's the name of our next podcast, Coffee and Crayons.
Coffee and crayons.
And I think, the next part of this is the reality of lending for business owners, right? So we've talked about kind of like the problems and who it applies to, but what is the reality of, the lending world when it comes to business owners and self-employed borrowers? Like, what are the banks looking for or not looking for?
Oh, they're looking for the perfect client.
Always.
Yeah, always. The problem is it doesn't exist. But look, it does. There is a time element. It's, especially when we're talking about doing, mortgage lending for business clients, so property and some big asset finance loans. Do not think it's going to happen overnight. There is a time element. Our system for lending to small business and even larger businesses is very poor in Australia. There's not the greatest sense of urgency that we would like. So you've got to allow time. You've got to be prepared that they're going to ask 1,000 questions. We try and preempt as many as we can along the way, and I will have twice as many conversations with the bank as they will be coming back to you and asking you questions, just to keep it moving. So yeah, it is a time issue, and that's where I get fearful. Monday morning when I get the contractor sale to say, "Hi, we bought this industrial property over the weekend. We're going to move in 6 weeks," and I think that's interesting.
Ambitious.
Okay, yeah. How are we going to map this out? Whereas the person who says, I'm thinking about buying something, we can make sure that they're in a position that when they do, it does happen as seamlessly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the hard part too, because then you've got, like, for example, newer business owners, like, or established SMEs, like that also plays a part in like what they can and can't do, right? Like, I think the newer businesses, I think they have to have like a certain a number of months or years in operation.
Yeah, it's sometimes interesting. So we have a lot of people who go from being employed to becoming consultants.
Yep.
And they've been told, well, I can't do anything for 2 years. Well, that's not quite true. You have got history. We do know that you can continue on. But then that's where some of our other lenders play a part as well. So, we have a myriad of lenders. You go from the top tier. We go to some second tiers, the Peppers and Prospers of this world, who do different things. And then I've got a whole other tier that will help you out with, if you've got a property and you have a strategy of what you're going to do, they'll come into the play there. So there are a different range of lenders, just like there's different types of finance. So, so we have got a lot of different options. And we also have some people who buy a franchise, and then there's some different rules for a franchise.
Yeah.
So we have different lenders for those. And then I've got other clients, especially in my pharmacy space, they're buying a pharmacy that has a sustained cash flow. That is actually the security. The pharmacy has a license attached to it. So we can do things around that.
I think, and this like goes so nicely into my next question, which is like, what do lenders actually, want to see or want to understand before they're comfortable to actually lend money out, whether that is for a home loan or a business loan?
The first thing I want to understand is, who is this person and what do they do? They've got to get their head around that. You've got to be able to explain, who are you and what you do. The whole focus of lending is how they're going to get their money back.
Yeah.
And that's not selling the security, that's actually the cash flow. So to even, before you even go down the numbers route, you need to start talking about, well, okay, this is who this person is. This is what they do, and this is why they're successful in what they do. So there's a whole character piece around that. And that's the biggest thing you have to get across as a finance broker to the lenders.
Yeah, so I think that piece was interesting, like that they need to know who you are,
Yeah.
as not just as a person, but as the business owner. And you would have probably dealt with a lot of businesses that are unique and different in some ways that aren't just traditional.
I think they're all a little bit unique.
Mm.
I don't know any of the two that are exactly the same, with
Right.
probably the franchise, and then even some of those, they're a little bit unique inside them. But yeah, they're all got their own little bits. You can say, oh, I'm just, I might be just a dentist. And you go, well, okay, but, what are you trying to specialise in? Oh, I look after kids and that's where I want to focus on, and that's my big interest. So there's a whole lot of different things that happen within, an industry. And yeah, sometimes it is just, okay, you're fairly vanilla, but
Yep.
well, how are you going to stand out in your market?
Yep.
Because if you're just vanilla, well, the guy down the road's doing that, and they're doing it better. So
Yep.
what are you trying to do?
So, and that's a very important piece, I think, in whether you, not qualify, but like that understanding of like, well, how's your business going to sustain long term if you've got 10 other competitors? Is that a factor sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest factors we've put into
Right.
it, is to say, okay, this is why you are successful. We need to understand that. What makes you different? Where do you get your clients from? A medical professional, anaesthetist, you think, well, he gets his clients. Well, his clients actually come from his surgeons. So, an anaesthetist doesn't do surgery on his own. There's a surgeon in there that needs an anaesthetist. And so you go, well, how do you have that relationship? And that flows through to every different type of business. So who are your clients? Where do they come from? And how can you build your growth?
I think that's an important conversation, like the building growth part, and knowing that the business landscape of what your business actually is takes a big factor into, how the lending's handed out, essentially.
Essentially.
Because this kind of takes me to like the next part, which is like options available to, different businesses. Now, you're probably going to tell me there's 10,000 options.
Oh, you can classify them into a couple of different buckets.
Yeah.
There's just more options within those buckets. But look, this is matching the finance for the purpose.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people over the years have come to me and said, oh, I just need some working capital. I love that statement. You just need some working capital. And I go, okay, describe to me what that is, and they say, oh, I need to pay the wages this week. And you go, yeah, but what happened to the cash? Why have you run into this problem? And, sometimes it is just an overdraft. That's what those people need. But other times it can be, they need a term loan. They need asset finance because they've actually gone and bought a whole lot of plant and equipment. It could be trade finance. They're importing from overseas.
Oh, right.
And, if you've got a timeline, it takes 6 weeks from the time you order it before it's even in the country. Well, that's an overdraft's not what you need. You actually need a product called trade finance.
I didn't even know that was an option, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And, that's where we need to talk to people about that. You got people who, pay you 60 days after invoicing, but you pay your workers every week. Well, okay, maybe you need some debtor finance. You can finance your invoices. I'm showing my age here. We used to call that factoring, which had a horrible idea. But, that's now a legitimate source of finance for businesses. So it's horses for courses. And, we're talking about things that are probably a larger business use.
Yeah.
But we still try and match, purpose to source.
That to me is, I'm hearing like 2 new loan types here. And I'm like, what? This is the stuff that I think a lot of business owners don't know about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that we're not expected to know absolutely everything, like it's not our niche, but the importance of, going to a broker that understands, like you said, where is the money being spent? Because a lot of the time I think fundamentals you'd see on a business is employees, and that's when they start to get like their overdrafts approved, things like that. Assets itself, like,
equipment,
but they're doing it all through credit cards, or they're doing it all through,
short-term
transfers.
loans,
Short-term loans,
They would never buy a property with a 6-month loan. Okay. They would always say, oh, I want that over, 20 years or something like that. And if it was your house, you'd do it over 30 years. Yeah, that makes sense because that's how long it's going to be around for. There's a lot of other finance around where people don't understand the options available that we're trying to match it. And I don't expect them to know. That's my job, is to actually work out what the purpose is and then come back to them with the solutions.
Yeah.
So, I look at some businesses and they're fantastic producers of profit. It's the cash that kills them, So, it's one of the big sort of sayings, I suppose, is that, profit doesn't pay the bills, cash pays the bills.
Yeah.
And so I've seen very profitable businesses go out backwards because the cash flow wasn't there. And that's because they didn't have it matched and sorted at the start.
And I think that's where I know that's like more of an accountant's role, but equally the mortgage broker comes in and can see this stuff too.
Yeah. We work hand in glove with accountants in a lot of things, but even accountants, they don't really, I'm not going to say a lot, some accountants don't really actually look into this enough. And when we find accountants that people have generally outgrown, I will quietly say to them, maybe it's time to move on. And, your business has gone to there. But conversely, I've got other accountants that are great and, fully embrace the role of a broker.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, they refer clients to me because they say, look, they actually need to talk to someone who's actually going to be around for quite a while in these businesses rather than the bank manager that's going to get promoted in 6 months.
Or go on maternity leave or pat leave.
Or become a broker. That would just happen a lot more. They're the great sort of people I deal with. And, when you have a good team around a business, it just helps them thrive.
That's true. And I said this earlier today in another episode where I'm like, I was talking to an advocate and I said, the team is your make or break. If you've got one loose, what do you call it, loose screw in that lot, it just breaks things immediately. And you need to make sure that everyone plays together nice, works well together, know each other. And that's why I always say, like, whoever your professional recommends, generally I would take the recommendation if you trust that professional, because they work together. That's where favors are pulled. That's where they can just call each other late night or, on a Saturday to make something happen for you. The connections are just, everyone works together much better.
Yeah. And, I unfortunately have seen, a good manager leave an organisation and be replaced by a very poor one. It's a disaster for us. It's a disaster for me. But I say, wow, this is a reasonable bank. And reasonable's been very nice to them, I can assure you. This is a reasonable bank, but we've ended up with a very bad manager. And, I have to deal with that. I speak to the bank first, saying I would like someone better to look after my clients.
Yeah, wow.
But in other cases, we just say it is time for us to leave.
Yeah.
We've come to the point where we need to start pulling businesses away from that bank and go to another one.
Yeah.
There are alternatives. There are always alternatives. And so we never want to end up with a situation where there's only one lender for my clients.
No.
That's a disaster for everybody. But yeah, we just we have fun with banks occasionally. So
I can only imagine. Don't know why.
Mm.
Well, I want to try out a new segment with you that I made specifically for your episode because I wanted to have a bit of fun. But also I think it's a really good scenario. So this segment's called Fix My Mess. All right. So this is where I'm going to give you a messy but realistic business scenario. And I want you to diagnose what's going wrong, what options might exist for this person, and what the business owner should stop assuming. So are you ready to have a crack with me?
I'm ready to have a crack, yeah.
It's fun because this is my first time doing the segment too. I was playing around with them the other night. So this scenario is the business owner who thinks borrowing is off the table. So let's say I'm a business owner in the property or finance space, so real estate maybe. The business is operating, but it's not perfect. Revenue comes in, but cash flow is lumpy. Some months are really strong and some months are very tight. I own a home, I've got a mortgage, and I may have some equity, but I've assume that I probably can't refinance or borrow because my business income is not as clean as a normal salary. So I've got a few things going on. I might need funds for equipment, staff, marketing, working capital or expansion. I may also want to refinance my personal lending to get a better structure or free up cash flow. I've got business expenses, maybe a tax bill coming up, and I've used credit cards or redraw here and there to keep things moving. I've basically told myself it's probably too hard. The bank won't lend to me. I'll just wait till the business looks better or gets cash flow positive. So, Ashley, fix my mess.
Well, if it's we say they're in the property part, there's industry rules or industry products for people like real estate agents where we can go to them and we can lend against the business.
Right.
There are certain industries that have different packages available to them.
Yeah.
Because their income is lumpy. It generally flows with how many
Commission.
properties they sold. We know there's a big pickup in spring and then it dies in sort of late autumn coming into winter because who wants to sell their houses when it's 3 degrees outside?
Gross.
Yeah. So there are options available and the banks are very good at coming up with, things for different industries. So that is one industry where there are a couple of banks that play in it very well and would understand that. Then we've just got to say, please don't use your credit card to buy equipment. And if you did in the past, let's fix that problem.
Yeah.
Because the expansion happens when you've got time and and that's what we're trying to give back to people. If you've got your finance sorted, you've stopped worrying about it, you stop being concerned about it, and you've got time to do other things.
Yeah.
So, their mess is actually, okay, let's get you sorted so you can actually have the time to go and do the things that you want to do. And that's grow your business in general.
Yeah.
So from that point of view. So to fix their mess, I would be talking about, well, okay, let me understand your business. Let me understand that lumpy cash flow cycle.
Yep.
And then let's go talk to a lender that actually wants to deal with real estate agents if it's a real estate agent. Or if it's a rent roll, let's talk to someone about a rent roll, sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Because these things have value. Your business might have a value that the bank might assign some value to it.
Yeah.
From that side of it. Now that applies to only certain industries, but we've got accountants out there. We can do things for lawyers. So those professional services, the medico people. They have a class at university, I'm sure, that says everything's for free. It's just after don't read my handwriting. They've a couple of people like that have got some really good, industry type lending, and the banks are very aggressive at. But not every bank does it. So you need to understand, well, which banks do it and which banks don't. And that's just making sure we match, your business with the best lender.
Yeah, well answered. I think the last question I have for you to fix my mess would be, I guess, what's the biggest mistake that this business owner could make if they try to solve the problem with the wrong type of finance?
They put themselves under pressure. That's the biggest thing. I find business owners who are awake at night worrying about their finance are not going to grow their business. Okay, so we've got to take the pressure off them. So by getting the right lender or the right type of finance, we want to take the pressure off them, because if you take the pressure off them, they'll perform, they'll grow, they'll do all the things. I have confidence that my clients are good at what they do. I've just got to make sure that they're not worrying about other things so they can be good at what they do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, because I imagine that a lot of people listening are the ones that are sitting up at night and getting stressed about finance. And sometimes I think it's just knowing your options, like knowing that there is a potential solution. But like even in the worst case, like this scenario, I don't think sounds too dire. Like they haven't made like a grave mistake. It's just that cash flow is lumpy. So they're probably feeling that late night pressure of, oh God, like, did I make enough sales this month? Are we going to survive? But it's knowing that you can make a phone call to say, like, just help me fix this.
Yeah.
Like this is not all doom and gloom. The worst case that would be an outcome is you've got to wait a little bit longer, or you've got to have a different strategy to.
We've got to have a strategy. People are the release people get when they have a strategy is amazing. Now that's whether they're buying a house or buying equipment for their business or refinancing. It's the release that people get of actually saying, this is the course of action and I've signed up to that and away we go.
Yeah.
The stress happens when there's no strategy or they don't agree with it. That's, you just say, well, I'm just trying to work with you here. I'm going to tell you what's possible. Don't
Yeah.
try and do the impossible because it's not going to happen.
I think that's where people get it so
Yeah.
wrong and it goes so pear-shaped. It's the fixing it themselves without knowing exactly what exists. And then this is where the holes happen, like my credit card debt, now I've got a redraw debt. It's like, oh my God, the debt.
The debt,
And
yeah.
I think that's the killer for a lot of people, that stress of, shit, I thought these were going to fix my problems, not make them worse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They had the sugar hit and now they're having the low. We're trying to just calm them down and get it on the steady stream.
And for one thing, thank you so much for participating in that. It was a lot of fun to actually ask you that. But one thing I want to ask is, is there ever a scenario that comes across your table, like with a business, where you actually think there's not anything you can do to help them?
They definitely exist, for sure. We've had some complete pie in the sky stuff. But I always say a quick no is a good no. I can't help you. That's not going to fly. Let's move on. That's I say that to my bankers as well, to say these are the scenarios. I want a quick no. I don't want something to be dragged on for a week, 2 weeks, a month.
No.
To know that the answer was always going to be no.
Which is painstaking.
Yeah, that's right. That doesn't do anyone any good anywhere. So even clients that come to me to say, this is my dilemma, I'm in a world of pain, I can look at it and say, yeah, you're in an extreme world of pain. Go and talk to your accountant about how you're going to get out of that, because there is no funding that's going to help you. We saw a bit of that in COVID, where, even when we came out of COVID, we ended up with some, smaller businesses in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, of course.
There was no easy solution for them. They had to either work through it or not survive.
Wow.
So, it's a very tough call for some of them, but, we just try and make it as painless as possible for a difficult situation. But look, I always say a quick no is a good no for if you can't help them.
100%. Yeah. It's like if lending's not the option, then that's where your accountant can come in and
help with others.
Help with something else, whether that is cull all your staff or cut down your options. You have to look at it.
And there's some good arrangements with our friends at the tax office, things like that. And your accountant can go through that, and they bring in other specialists to work through those sort of situations. So it's not always doom and gloom. It's not. It's not you're not going to survive, but we'll see how it goes.
No, I really appreciate that. I can't believe how quick the time's gone. I was just checking, going, oh wow, we talk a lot, but in a good way. I think this has been so practical, and I'm really thankful for your time and for sharing your wisdom. Like I said, 30 years, like you talk about this like it's so easy in a good way.
But I enjoy it. So
I can tell. A quick pause. We'll be right back. Here's a word from one of our sponsors who supports the show. If traditional networking feels stiff and transactional, then Lux VIP is something completely different. Good food, good people, real connections, and genuinely fun events that stand out from the usual business crowd. If you want networking done differently, or just want to have a bit of fun and meet the right people that will help bolster your business forward, then come along to Lux VIP events. Talk to Steve McMiniman. His details are in the show notes below, and he's the one who runs Lux VIP events. Come and have fun with us. I'm part of the crew, and so are all or most of our guests. So come and have fun with us. We'll see you there. And I think the last question to you would be, what's your final advice to someone who's, listening today and they're feeling that kind of, pressure of, I don't know what to do, help me. What's your kind of like key takeaway to them? Like as a business owner, what do they prepare before speaking to a broker so the conversation is actually useful, like to someone like yourself?
I think they've got to have an understanding of A, what they do. So I need to understand that. And B, what is it they're actually trying to achieve? Okay. Don't worry about the bit in between. I'm more interested in, okay, what is it you're trying to achieve here? And then we can start working out, well, where are you and how did you get there? And then get to where you want to go. So I just want to get a full understanding of, tell me about who you are, what your business is, and what you're trying to achieve. And then we can talk about where are you and how you got to where you are. And then we can figure out the roadmap. So as I say, it's the butcher paper and crayon.
Yep.
It's me and my pad actually understanding, well, okay, what's all the different pieces of the puzzle, and then we can start making it, fit.
Makes sense. And I guess, and then what would you say to those business owners who are still waiting for everything to be perfect, cash flow positive, before they ask what their options are?
You're going to be waiting a long time. You're waiting for perfection. Perfection is having all your taxes done on the 1st of July.
That's true.
That's not going to happen. Doesn't happen in my business, that's for sure. So, there is no such thing as perfection. Okay. The time to do things is now. And the time to be planning is now. We need to understand, it's the old adage, when's the great time to plant a tree? It was 10 years ago.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you don't plant one today. You can always sort your finances out. We can always talk about your strategy. Every loan I've ever written is valid the day we signed it. It wasn't valid the next day because things change.
Wow.
So you appreciate that. Okay, it's a point in time, but next week something else happens. You get a new customer. You've doubled your business. There's been an economic downturn. Everything's always on the move. Everything's changing. Let's just keep talking. Keep talking. Keep the conversations going. And then we'll just make sure that we're always doing things, together to make your business as successful as possible.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing that. And I can't let you go without coming back to our no BS statement of the day. I need your verdict. So just a reminder, the statement was, a profitable business does not mean a finance-ready business. So Ashley, final verdict, is that bullshit or not bullshit?
I'm going to call it bullshit. And I'm going to call it bullshit because profit is not cash. So a business that's finance ready is one that's got a good cash flow.
Yeah.
You can have an unprofitable business because you might have high depreciation or something around that side. That's still a viable customer to lend money to.
Yeah.
Conversely, you can have a very profitable business going out backwards because their customers just don't pay. So I'm sorry, not.
It's bullshit.
Cash beats profit every day of the week. So I'll say bullshit.
Love it. No, that's why I do it, because I don't want it to be too one-sided where it's always no bullshit. Sometimes we need to call bullshit.
Yeah.
Ashley, thanks so much once again for being here and for sharing all your wisdom with our listeners today. I know the business owners here will definitely probably be in touch. I think you're very unique in what you specialise in. So thank you again.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And thank you to our listeners for always tuning in. I think the biggest takeaway from today is that business owners should not automatically assume that their borrowing or their refinancing is off the table, just because your income is more complex than maybe a standard PAYG. So there might be options, and there are options, but the right one depends on the business, the income, the documents and the purpose of the funds, and the existing debt and the bigger plans. So have the right people surrounding you and the right professionals. And if you want to connect with Ashley to get that sorted, his details are on screen and in the show notes below. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the No BS Business Podcast. We'll be back and I think we've got a couple of more episodes on the Business Podcast coming up, so we're very excited for that. But we'll see you next time on the show. I'm Jo Agresta. Bye for now. That's a wrap for this episode of the No BS Real Estate Podcast, powered by Abodi AI. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more guidance on your home buying journey, you can visit www.abodi.com.au for expert advice, property insights, and the tools you need to find the right home with confidence. If you're already on your journey, you can also download our app. Just search Abodi AI on the App Store or Google Play. Have any questions or want to connect, you can follow us on Instagram at abodi.com.au or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.